What's up, everyone? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football. Today, we are going to break down the Tennessee roster ahead of the 2025 season. Before we get started, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel. All that helps us a ton. Our analytics show about 70% of you are not subscribed. So if you enjoy the content, it is a great way to help out a small channel just trying to make it out here. And last thing, we're talking very early in the offseason. It is May 1st as we record this. The transfer portal just closed. If the prediction is bad on your team, doesn't mean we hate the team. This is just trying to be objective analysis, and a lot is going to change before the season starts. So leave a comment. Let me know if you think something is wrong and why, importantly, so we can get better and we'll move forward. But we're talking Tennessee football fresh off a playoff appearance. So let's dive right in. We're going to talk Tennessee's metrics from last year and how they achieved this, how they got to the playoff, and what we can expect moving forward. The offense, I think a lot of people will view this as something that held Tennessee back, and largely it did in their most important games. But over the course of the season, this was still the 41st ranked unit. So with the defense they had, still far and away good enough to get to the college football playoff, especially with the schedule they had. Biggest questions with the offense were blocking. They were outside the top 70 in both pass blocking and run blocking, which I think you can understand with Iamaleava under center how you get to the 40% pass rate, 39.9. Defense was just awesome across the board. They have a lot of departures from this unit as we'll break down the roster. But this was still a Josh Heupel-led team, as you can see by the seconds per play. He is running at the speed of light, and even with a run-heavy approach he had to take last year under Dylan Sampson, that has not changed. Heupel has been with the team for 5 years now. This is his 5th year already, which is crazy. I remember when he just took the job. Record is 37-15. He's won at least 9 games in the last 3 seasons. Last year's playoff appearance, of course, they got bounced very early by the eventual champions. No shame there. Otherwise, their losses came against Arkansas and Georgia, Arkansas being the worst loss they took by a mile. But again, it was a pretty easy SEC schedule. They have that same benefit, I guess, this year. Their best wins came against Alabama or Florida. And it's just overall been a very good Josh Heupel experience. If they would have had the expanded playoff in 2022, they also would have made it that year. So just an awesome overall body of work for them. Offensive coordinator is Joey Hasley. He's been there since 2023, but he's been there before. He originally was the offensive quarterbacks coach, and then he took over the OC job. And it's been pretty good for him so far. Again, they've shown the ability to work with multiple quarterbacks. You're talking Joe Milton, Hendon Hooker. And since he's been elevated, he's shown the ability to at least morph his offense to different styles. And Iamaleava, they had to be very run heavy. So Halsey's been awesome since he took over the job full time. Defensive coordinator, a lot of continuity here as well. Tim Banks, he's been there since Heupel took over. Previously of Penn State, they've had awesome defenses. As they project to be strong on that side of the ball this year, recruiting, Tennessee has been above average for the most part. They are middling in the SEC, but that's just kind of how it is. You can be top 15 in the country in most classes and still finish. Like this year, they're 8th in the SEC, but 11th overall. Last year, they were 8th in the SEC, 14th overall. Retention's up and down. They're 100% retention the last 2 classes and 50% in 2023. That's evidenced by a lot of players departing, especially on offense in last year's cycle. So they could do a little bit better there. This team does hit the transfer portal harder than some. They have not this year. They ranked 83rd. That is climbing. They've taken some spring portal window guys, and they've had to because of the departures. Not just a quarterback. They've lost some offensive linemen and Larry Johnson, but we'll dive into that. The 2 previous portal classes were 31st and 37th. I think they'll probably finish somewhere around that when it's all said and done in this cycle. But let's dive into the roster. So we have a tool we created, which is going to come up later this week. Basically, this is just a 2-deep depth chart we're trying to create where you guys can have access to it. It changes throughout the offseason as portal additions come in, guys depart, injuries happen, whatever it may be. So yellow, highlighted players, transfers incoming. Red are players that are injured or at least have some injury concern. Then there's the snaps the last 2 years, the recruiting ranking in terms of stars, and a player ranking overall. So what that is, it evaluates your recruiting first and foremost if you haven't played. Then the more snaps you accrue on a football field, the less it takes the recruiting ranking into account, and the more it takes your on-field play. So we start with Tennessee at QB. Nico Iamaleava leaves in the complete fiasco, goes to UCLA. Tennessee brings in App State's former quarterback Joey Aguilar. There's really no way to spin this other than it's a downgrade. Iamaleava was the 42nd most efficient quarterback in college football last year. Aguilar was the 67th. Aguilar played at a lower level of competition in App State. He only completed 56% of his passes. 3,003 yards is solid, 23 touchdowns, 14 picks. But he did have 26 big-time throws to 25 turnover-worthy plays. Better counting stats in 2023, but he still has had a problem with big-time throws versus turnover-worthy plays. He's, in the year prior, had 24 big-time throws and had 26 turnover-worthy plays. So this is something that has plagued Aguilar for a while now. And if you remember Tennessee last year, they're like, okay, Iamaleava's problems where he overthrows open receivers. All he does is hand the ball off. Well, there's one thing about interceptions. They're worse than incompletions. They're worse than when you neuter an offense and just hand the ball off. I think there's a chance that they do this with Aguilar, and I also think there's a chance Aguilar doesn't start. They have a 4-star in Jake Merklinger from 2024. Played 36 snaps last year. 160th ranked recruit in last year's class, 6'3", 215 pounds. They also have freshman George McIntyre from this incoming class. Aguilar's a super low-level prospect. He started the last 2 years, but if you remember back to App State in 2023, he only started because Ryan Berger got hurt in game 1. He was not the starting quarterback to win the year. He lost the job to a player who's basically not played in college football since. And since then, he has 50 turnover-worthy plays in 2 seasons. This is the SEC. There's levels to this. We'll talk about that as we get to some of the other transfers Tennessee's brought in previous classes that had not lived up to expectation. But man, I hope Aguilar or Merklinger can figure it out. I think you just go with the redshirt freshman 4-star right away, rather than roll the dice on this gunslinger Joey Aguilar. There's a reason a lot of teams didn't want him in the portal. Anyway, we move forward to running back, where they also lost Dylan Sampson, this time to the NFL. He had nearly 1,500 rushing yards last year and 22 scores. He was a do-it-all back for this offense because Heupel and Housley did not feel like they could run an offense through Iamaleava. So you had a running back with nearly 1,500 yards. Now you're changing it over. This is a good position for Tennessee. They are very deep here. Dejon Bishop, a former 3-star, he carried 74 times for 455 yards. That's 6.1 yards per carry last year. 5'10", 200 pounds. He only caught 1 pass, but Tennessee does not throw to their running backs. That's more of a historical trend with Heupel. But the other thing I'll say about the running backs before getting into more players, again, remember, this was not the best run blocking unit. They were outside the top 80. So what Sampson did and then what Bishop did on a small sample are very promising. These are good backs, and they might just have to run an offense similar to what we saw last year. They will be able to do that and have success with that. From there, 4-star sophomore Peyton Lewis is back, carried 64 times. Again, another back over 5 yards per carry, 339 yards, caught 4 passes. He's 6'1", 212 pounds. Heupel likes running a committee. Last year, they did not really have the bodies for it, but I think you might see Bishop and Lewis running a committee with potentially Star Thomas coming in from Duke, formerly of New Mexico State. He could potentially factor into this. 6 feet, 210 pounds, 871 yards last year, caught 20 passes. And they also have a 4-star freshman in Dwayne Morris. So I think this is a pretty good unit, 4 stars or proven production across the board, and some good transfers. Wide receivers where things get very murky for Tennessee. And I'm surprised they haven't added someone in the spring window. They still could. There are a few names out there. I don't know if it's exactly what you want. But they lost their top 3 receivers, Dante Thornton, Brew McCoy, and Squirrel White. They also lost some depth pieces. Their top returner is former Tulane transfer Chris Brazell. This is the main example of taking a step down when you go to the SEC. He caught 29 balls for 333 yards last year. And he's still a good receiver, 6'5", 200 pounds, played out wide 97% of the time. However, his yards per route dropped from 2.24 with Tulane to 1.23. This level of competition stuff is real. Just because you were a baller in the G5 does not mean you will produce in the SEC. We see this year after year. Gage Larvadain. I mean, just go down the list. Anyway, he's the number 1, but I think there's a real chance that they just turn to their former highly recruited sophomores. Mike Matthews, the 5-star, Braylon Staley, the 4-star. These guys have to play regardless. They don't need to be the number one because Brazel is reliable, but this offense is going to be a lot better if one of them develops into a bona fide one and hopefully a 2. Matthews, the 5-star, 6'1", 200 pounds, caught 7 passes last year. They did not want to force these freshmen into action. Staley was their slot receiver when he did play, 6 feet, 190 pounds, only caught 3 passes. But these guys are going to have to play because there's just not a lot of bodies behind them. If you look to the depths, you have Alabama transfer Amari Jefferson. He was a 4-star last year, but he did not play. And then they have 2 incoming 4-stars in Travis Smith and Rodarius Jackson. They might just have to be thrown to the fire early because they do not have the depth. They do not have the bodies. We're quickly talking low 3 stars, walk-ons. They need this production from these young players. So it's a lot to bank on with a quarterback that's brand new as well. The pass game is a significant question for Tennessee, easily the biggest question on the entire team. But again, they do not play a difficult schedule, and they did not need this last year. The run game was awesome. Tight end, they returned their 5th leading receiver, Miles Kitselman, but he had surgery in the spring. He tore his pec, it looks like. They just called it pectoral surgery, so I'm not sure if this is a full tear or partial tear. But it at least adds an availability question. They need him. He's a good blocker. He's 6'5", 256 pounds, formerly of Alabama. Decent pass catcher, too. Caught 22 balls for 301 yards. They need him. Behind him, they have Ethan Davis, the 4-star, 177 snaps last year, pretty average. Split his time between blocking and receiving, caught 13 balls. He's 6'5", 246. Otherwise, we're looking at freshmen for the highly recruited players. Desan Brom and Jack Vandelorser, probably your top 2 incoming freshmen, but they're young. Tennessee does not like playing these young players unless they absolutely have to, which makes sense. It's the SEC, especially at tight end. It needs development. The offensive line could be also a little dicey this year. They lost 7 of their top 8 offensive linemen, and the player they return is Lance Hurd, who did not have the best season in his first year starting. Former 5-star of LSU, transferred out when LSU basically started all those other elite blockers over him. And now it kind of makes sense. He was a terrible run blocker, and as a pass blocker, he was just average. 21 pressures allowed, but this team, again, did not pass the ball very often, one of the lowest pass rates in the country. And if you can't run block in this unit, especially this year, it's also going to be a problem. So he comes in as the worst offensive lineman. His production was poor last year, and we're projecting a step forward at the 43rd percentile in blocking overall. Left guard, they bring in Notre Dame transfer Sam Pendleton. Played 492 snaps last year. He was solid, only 6 pressures allowed. So guard should be fine. Notre Dame played good competition. Left guard should be solid. The center position is truly up in the air. You're going to have an inexperienced player basically regardless. In the spring, it's been William Satterwhite battling Max Anderson. I don't know who wins that job. I don't know if they're any good, but they are highly recruited players, so we will see. Right guard should be Wendell Moe, who comes in from Arizona. 2-year starter there. Average run blocker, but elite pass blocker. He's only allowed 24 pressures over the last 2 seasons. And then right tackle, I think you basically have 5-star freshman David Sanders Jr. coming in and taking this right away. He was competing with Larry Johnson in the spring, but Johnson decided to hit the portal. Seems like that position battle was going Sanders' direction anyway, if that was the decision Johnson made. So you've got a lot of new starters, 2 completely new starters, 2 other new faces from the portal, and your worst offensive lineman as the incumbent. Depth has been hit by the portal throughout the last couple cycles. You have a couple 4-stars in Bennett Warren and Shamarad Umarov, and incoming freshman Nick Moore. But that's about it as far as highly recruited players. This unit trails a lot of others in the SEC. Defensive line. Tennessee lost an absolute wagon in first-round pick in James Pierce. He had 55 pressures last year, so he is gone. But this is a very deep unit, and this should be the strength of Tennessee again. Joshua Josephs, their former 4-star, was awesome. 22 pressures on just 365 snaps as a rotational player. The only concern is extrapolating that moving forward, giving him a bigger role, but he was good, really good, as a younger player in a rotational role. They also have Dominic Bailey back, 416 snaps for him. Less effective, not the best run defender, but he was very good in quarterback pressures. 25 of them, his win rate was worse than Joseph's. But this is a great place to start. You have 2 experienced players, good recruits, maybe a little weak in run defense, but solid overall. And the depth is awesome. 4 stars Tyree West, 201 snaps. 4-star Caleb Herring, 119 snaps. They added a 5-star last year, Jordan Ross. He barely played. You have a sophomore 5-star waiting in the wings. You have former 4-stars Jaden Lofton and Emmanuel Okoye from the last 2 classes. Even losing a first rounder, this is so many highly recruited players. And you have like a 5-star that hasn't played, multiple 4-stars below 300 snaps. You would expect this maybe not to live up to last year's expectations, but not fall far. This is a very good edge group. Inside, I have a few more questions. They do return 2 of the 3 main contributors, Bryson Eason and Jackson Moy, but these were not the best players. Moy especially was a little bit below average, but Eason, former 4-star, he was very good, above average there. They also have a couple 4-stars in Davin Hobbs and Tyree Weathersby that are back with the team after limited production. They just worked in rotation. And Tennessee will do that with their defensive tackles. It makes sense. And it's not just them. They have 4-stars Isaiah Campbell, Marion Dye, Ethan Utley, Kellen Lindstrom, Charles House. Those are all on the roster. They also took a Grand Valley transfer and Josh Shell, excuse me. I'm not sure why he did that, but that's a lot of bodies. I mean, of the 4-star caliber at least, we're talking 5 players that haven't even really played yet, 2 more that played in rotation, and then that's not even including Eason and Moy. They should be able to find the bodies among the 8 or so highly recruited defensive tackles they have on this team. Tennessee's D-line should be another very good unit this year. Linebacker, they return Arian Carter, 611 snaps, led the team in tackles. He's a former 4-star, and surprisingly for a linebacker, he was better in coverage and as a pass rusher than against the run. As long as he cleans up a few missed tackles, he should be a fantastic starter returning. They also have 3-star Jeremiah Tellender back after 455 snaps. He was another good player. Very different, the opposite of Carter. He was elite in run defense, but he got roasted in coverage. Only 15 targets, but 12 of them were completed. And plus, if one of them gets hurt or can't stand up to SEC play, 4-stars Edwin Spillman and Jordan Burns are still on the roster. They recruited 3 4-star linebackers in this class, Jaden Harmon, Christian Glass, Jaden Perlot, excuse me. So depth at linebacker, this should be another very good unit. And then perhaps the best unit on the entire team, one I thought was the biggest question last year, and they ended up getting it together, was the secondary. They returned basically everything outside of Will Brooks. So outside corner, we'll start here. First place we look is Oregon State transfer Jamad McCoy. Started with Tennessee last year, 50% completion allowed, 6 PBUs, 4 picks, 2 years of starting experience. He's an awesome player. The second highest graded player on defense behind Josephs. And then from there, the second boundary corner should be Ricky Gibson, former 4-star. Allowed just 247 yards, 3 PBUs on 636 snaps. Very good boundary corners. They also have Jalen McMurray, who played 264 snaps. And he started with Temple before coming over to Tennessee. So you have depth at outside corner. In the slot, you have options. Boo Carter, their 4-star freshman, was forced into action last year after Jordan Thomas, the projected starting safety, got hurt in camp. But now Thomas is back. Boo Carter was very up and down as a freshman, but again, he's a 4-star freshman in the SEC. A lot of options here. And they also have 4-star sophomore Caleb Beasley, incoming 4-star Trey Petit. A lot of good corners on this team. Safety should be much of the same. Andre Turntine is back after 554 snaps. He was a big question mark, below average across the board, and showed up in multiple ways. He allowed nearly 19 yards per catch, so he was getting burned downfield at times. He's small for a safety, 5'11", 195 pounds. That shows up in the run game. So that's a bit of a problem for them. It's a weak link. Their other safeties up for grabs because Jacoby Thomas at the portal. So you're probably looking at Edris Farouk or Marcus Gore. They played a little bit last year, but both under 60 snaps. I think the best case scenario for this team is you could get Boo Carter or maybe Jordan Thomas to come over and play the safety position after they played a lot of nickel. Maybe you move one of your corners, but it's still a pretty deep unit. That's just one question. Who plays that other safety spot? I don't have the answer. But if you want to see potential depth options, we have these below all the way at the bottom. There's also incoming transfers, departing transfers, so you can see who left or did what. Here's all the departures offensively and defensively. And overall, that brings me to the power rankings. Tennessee, we currently have as the 6th worst team in the SEC. And that's because of their offense mainly. Their defense is still very strong. It has a couple positions that lag a little bit. But man, if they could clean up the quarterback position or add a transfer, that's going to go a long ways to deciding if Tennessee finishes up by Florida or if they finish down by Mississippi State. The Aguilar-Merklinger battle, as well as what happens at receiver, it's going to go a long way. But let's leave this and go to the schedule and talk about that, because this is Tennessee's probably their biggest benefit this year is what they play. This Syracuse game in week 1 is at Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta. Weird non-con game, but that should be a win. They're better than Syracuse. Then they play ETSU, New Mexico State in non-conference, as well as UAB. There's a very real chance this team is 4-0 in non-conference. And then this is one of the easier SEC schedules. When you look at the bottom of the power rankings in the SEC, you have Mississippi State, you have Arkansas, you have Vanderbilt, and you have Kentucky. All of those teams are worse than Tennessee currently, and all of those teams should be wins for this Tennessee roster. It gets a little dicey when you start playing Alabama, Florida, Georgia, and Oklahoma, but you still dodge Texas and you dodge Texas A&M, 2 teams at the top of the conference. You don't play the middle at all. No Ole Miss, no Florida. So, I mean, you do play Florida. No, let's see here. No, like Auburn, no LSU. So the middle part of the conference it's an imbalance. It's this barbell. It's either really good or really bad. So, I mean, at best, this is probably an 8-win team. If they could knock off one of the better teams, you're talking 9 teams. That's getting close to the playoffs. I think they're still on the outside looking in for a playoff berth, and the most likely situation here is probably a 7-5. But this still should be firmly a bowl team based on what the schedule allows, and then the rest is just going to come up to player development. Heupel's been awesome at this. I'm not counting Tennessee out by any means. I think there's a very real chance this team wins 9 games. I do not know about the playoff. I just don't know if you have the horses in the offensive line, quarterback, and receiver to get that done. It would be a huge ask. But everything's there for the taking. They need to upset one of these teams at the top of their schedule, and they could very well be better than Florida or Oklahoma. It's really just the Alabamas and the Georgias that hold me back from thinking this team is a legit playoff contender. But we shall see. Let me know in the comments what you think. Very much appreciate you watching. Thank you if you have. We'll be back again sooner or later this week. Until then, good luck, everyone. We'll see you later.